of Guinea-Bissau, whereby a sitting president, fearing that he was losing election, decided to stage a coup by inviting the military wing of his ruling party, as it were, to overthrow his government. And if you take the countries one after the other, you may make only one exception. Maybe Ghana, that we can say enjoys political stability. If you talk of Ghana, if you talk of Senegal, Kevad, but with respect to all the other countries, it's either the ruling party is working assiduously to have a one-party state within the current state in Nigeria, whereby the government has not gone to parliament to enact a law to outlaw the other political parties or prevent candidates from contesting. But what has happened in the case of Nigeria is to use a lot of measures to get governors to declare for the ruling party. So as of the last count, we have about 30 governors out of 36 that have declared for the ruling party. And I think my wife was asking me a couple of days ago, the way things are going in Nigeria, is he sure there will be election, or we're just going to declare, just going to ask the president to go ahead? Because you have a situation where a sitting minister is being used by the government so brazenly to destroy the leading opposition political party, and that's the PDP. And if you look at section 318 of the Constitution, government is defined as the federal, state, or local government, or any official of the government. It's a government. So the action that is going on in PDP or the actions of Mr. Wike are clearly the actions of the ruling party. From there, the deniers, Now, once you have a situation like that, the government will say, and every time the government says, we're not in any way harassing opposition political parties. But once you don't allow a viable opposition to operate in a country, you have a problem in your hands. I just issued a statement yesterday whereby I call on the government to either charge or release those who were arrested for planning a coup last October. In other words, the government denied that there was a coup to give the impression that we enjoy political stability in the country. But the media has repeatedly maintained that there was a coup. So I'm addressing you. There are about 42 military officers who are in detention since October. And I'm saying this is not in line with the Constitution of Nigeria. So you either charge them before the court or you release them. So the point I'm making therefore is that this whole bogey of third term or fourth term in the region is one of the immediate causes of unconstitutional change of government. The other one that we hardly talk about, another major reason for constitutional change of government, is our economy, the economy of each of our countries. Each of our countries, including the stable ones, our countries are implementing neoliberal policies dictated by imperialist institutions like World Bank and IMF. The program of ECOWAS, economic program of ECOWAS, or that of African Union, has manifested, in the AFTA, that is the African Free Trade Zone Agreement. Majority of our countries are not interested in having a common market in Africa where there will be movement of goods. We're not interested. So we are promoting in each of our countries policies that are promoting poverty, are being religiously implemented by the government. And hence, once a military guy goes to seize the radio station and makes an announcement, and the government has overthrown, before you know it, people rush to the street. to welcome those far come to disrupt the democratic process. Because for the people, there's no difference between military dictators and civilian dictators. And that explains what happens in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Now, those three countries where the military gave one reason or the other to take over power, particularly these soldiers come to say, the civilians are not fighting terrorism. So we want to do it better, They're not fighting corruption, we want to do it better. But at the end of the day, the military dictators are by far worse. Three Sahelian states that have withdrawn from ECOWAS. Again, it is sadly realized by us, by most of us, that the reason why these guys would go, it's nothing to do with their anti-imperialist slogans, or posture. It has to do with the fact that the ECOWAS leadership, as usual, insisted that you must have a transition program. Because you must return to democratic rule. These guys simply had no answer. They're not ready to live, not ready to quit as military dictators. So they made it, they therefore said, we are pulling out. And after pulling out, each of them has now brought out an elongated transition program whereby a military dictator will want to be in power for 7 years. In the case of Burkina Faso, those guys in Mali will be in power for 9 years without conducting election. And at the end of the day, they are likely to metamorphose into civilian dictators, just as we have just witnessed in Guinea-Conakry. So the picture before us is a very terrible one, whereby we cannot vouch for political stability in our countries. ECOWAS does not go beyond issuing statements, suspending winners of, or rather, those who unseat democratic governments. Sanctions are imposed. They are ineffective. But at the end of the day, we also campaign that the civilian populace should not be subjected to hardship. So that you have a situation today where the three Sahelian states that are pulled out of ECOWAS, some of the ECOWAS member states are also compelled to trade with them on fighting terrorism. What can we do together? So, and for us, we must also find out why our system is so weak that the democratic structures, the media, electronic and print media, are no longer what they were in the 80s and 90s. Two, these civilian governments and military dictators have introduced very terrible anti-democratic measures. Each of them now, just like Nigeria, is using cyber crimes under the pretext of fighting cyber crimes. Terrible provisions are brought into the law, whereby instead of suing opponents for libel, defamation, civil, instead of filing civil cases in court, the state now resort to criminalization of freedom of expression. So we're also constructing the democratic space. The last one I should mention is that our governments or these regimes have captured the judiciary This is very important. You have a situation whereby it is difficult for people to go to court to challenge authoritarian rule on democratic practices by the government. Since the courts have been captured, you can predict the judgment that the courts will deliver. Again, unlike the 80s and 90s, where the courts were instruments of human rights, democratic practices, where the courts upheld the rights of people. Today, you have the ECOWAS court, which is the regional court, and ECOWAS court came up when we felt that the municipal courts were afraid to give judgment against ruling parties. We therefore needed a regional court to be a buffer, then provide an opportunity for community citizens to challenge illegal actions of the government in their respective countries. Now, it was difficult to have the ECOWAS court. But since the ECOWAS court exists, and if you read the judgments, it's one of the, I can tell you, in terms of jurisprudence, that court has come to stay. But the decisions of the court are ignored by all the countries. Nigeria is leading country, is the leading country in terms of treating the judgments of the court with contempt. I think by January 2025, Nigeria was disobeying about 46 judgments delivered by the court. I think followed by, Togo. I think that of Togo is about 11, and so on and so forth. So today, there is no country in the sub-region that can be said to be rule of law compliant in terms of complying with the judgments of the court, in terms of upholding human rights of the people, in terms of, promoting independent judiciary. And so what we have in the sub-region are fascist dictators. We have the African Court on Human and People's Rights in Arusha, Tanzania. Only 4 members among the member states of ECOWAS have recognized the jurisdiction of the court. You are required, even though all of them have adopted the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, but with respect to the court that took off in 2006, only 4 member states have deposited the instrument to show that we recognize the jurisdiction of the court. And which are the 4 countries? Ghana, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Benin. Benin has pulled out of the court. Ghana is there. Of course, with Mali and Burkina Faso, even though they haven't pulled out. But they are not going to comply with the judgments of the court, just like they don't comply with judgments in their own countries. And I must say something very briefly before I conclude on Burkina Faso. If you are monitor the situation in Burkina Faso, the young dictator there is promoted as the defender of the African people. He's running the best government in Africa today, and that you don't need democracy. As it is the case in Burkina Faso, you are told that that country has written off its debts. You are told that it's self-sufficient in food production. You are told that from primary to university is free education, and so on and so forth. I want to say with profound respect that these are lies packaged to deceive the African people, particularly young people. Nothing has changed in that country. And if you know the history of that country, there is a world of difference between Sankara and Traore. Traore is just a typical dictator. If you criticize him in that country today, be you a lawyer, a journalist, or whatever, you are sent to the war front without any training at all. And you know the implication of that. He asks you to go and fight terrorists since you are criticizing him. So, but unfortunately, it's gaining support in Africa because of lack of credible alternatives. So this guy is a well-oiled propaganda, not just to promote him, but also to promote military rule and discredit the democratic process. Unfortunately, the democratic governments or pseudo-democratic regimes do not appreciate the danger of such propaganda. For instance, when Ghana had this the last election, the inauguration of President Mahama, I don't know what happened. This guy was invited, Traore, and he stole the show. And so for young people, oh, this guy is dealing with imperialism. There is no doubt that France has to be fought. There's no doubt about that. But in fighting France, you need to fight the control of the economy of each of these countries, the reckless exploitation of natural resources, and self-reliance. But you can't fight one imperialism and embrace another imperialism. As they are expelling France, which is good, they are also bringing in the Chinese and the Russians to replace France. So it is these states remain neo-colonial regimes. I mean, these states are run by neo-colonial regimes. But what is important for concerned Africans, pro-democracy activists, human rights activists, and intellectuals is to see how we can get engaged politically, how we can get our countries run properly and democratically. And now we can show that the economy of our countries are in the hands of our people. The last point I just want to mention is the implication of the withdrawal of the Sahelian states in the fight against terrorism in the sub-region, with the three of them withdrawing. And having regard to their unlimited resources, some of the dangerous terrorist groups, Al-Qaeda, ISWAP, and the rest of them, are coming down. And if care is not taken, they are going to, these terrorist groups, as in the case of Nigeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and the rest of them, the terrorist groups are taking over, and they are making it impossible for us to have political stability. Hundreds and thousands of people have been killed, notwithstanding that these states are pulled out of ECOWAS. It is also in the interest of this sub-region that between ECOWAS and the Sahelian states, there has to be a program, a channel towards fighting terrorism. We want to have the multi-nation task force, Nigeria, Niger, in Chad. We must go back to that era so that we can put resources together so that the military in each of our countries can work together and ensure that we wage a consistent and successful war on terror. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to conduct elections in some of the states. And the unfortunate aspect in the case of Burkina Faso and Mali is that whereas the military guys said the civilians were not fighting, they are not prosecuting the war on terror. But what has happened in the last 3-4 years is that the terrorists have fixed more territories in this country. Just like in the case of Nigeria, where farmers and peasants are now forced to negotiate with terrorists because the state is unable to save the people. And if care is not taken, you have a madman in Washington, in the state, and I'm talking of Mr. Trump, is going to take advantage of the weakness of our states to intervene militarily, as in the case of Nigeria. What happened in December on Christmas Day, where these guys, I have killed terrorists and I wish them, happy Christmas, including those who have been killed, but the implication is that our countries, like a country like Nigeria, is also being divided under the pretext of fighting Christian genocide, which is a myth. You are dividing the people. So you now have a situation where Christians are saying, please come and save us from, fundamentalism, terrorists. Whereas if you look at the figures, more Muslims have been killed by these terrorists who believe that these Muslims are not genuine Muslims. So they don't care. And just like kidnappers don't care about your religion. Is to kidnap people to get ransom. So when you are having a fellow like Trump or his friends, and Netanyahu now is not talking about Christian genocide in Nigeria. That's somebody who is wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity, for the genocidal attacks on Palestinians in Gaza. Many of them are Christians, So we also have to be careful with respect to the intervention by Mr. Trump, by Mr. Netanyahu, and other enemies of Africa. Finally, where do we go from here? We need to mobilize in each of our countries. We need to mobilize democratic forces. We need to revise civil society organizations that were, mounting prayer on the ECOWAS. We used to have, well, of course, West African Bar Association. We used to have WAJA, West African Journalists Association. We used to have even an umbrella organization for the ECOWAS civil society organization. We need to revive them. We need to revitalize them and see how we can position ourselves to defend democracy in West Africa, to defend the sovereignty of each of our countries, and to support the struggle to have the economy of each of our countries in the hands of our people. I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful, wonderful and insightful presentation. Sincerely, I'm lost for words. It goes on to show that we are a long way from independence, true independence, and hopefully we'll get there someday. It is so wonderful to know that there are already questions lined up in the chat box, and thankfully we will now proceed to the Q&A session. The first question is from Remy Ajibewa. Please forgive me if I pronounce your name wrongly. The question says, how has the withdrawal of Niger Burkina Faso, Mali from ECOWAS affected counter-terrorism efforts in West Africa? Secondly, the person asked, what are the efforts made by ECOWAS on the withdrawal of the 3 member states in addressing terrorism and other security crises? That's the first question from Remy. Sir.
As I did say, the exit of the 3 member states, the Sahelian states, has no doubt affected very adversely the fight against terror. A situation whereby the 3 member states that ordinarily to work under ECOWAS to have a coordinated attack on terrorists, currently on their own, even though France has withdrawn from these states, Russia has come in. Unfortunately, the difference is clear. I mean, it's not that one is preferring one imperialist country for another. But the point I'm making is that by pulling out of ECOWAS, it has been difficult to have a coordinated reaction and coordinated efforts in fighting terrorism. And so my position is that notwithstanding their withdrawal from ECOWAS, it is important to reach out to them and see what ECOWAS and the Sahelian states can do to work together in that area. Because the enemy of my enemy, as it is often said, it's my friend. Now, if you have a situation where we are fighting ourselves, the terrorists are happy and we are weak in challenging them. So it's something that we have to, the ECOWAS leadership will have to review its strategy in engaging the 3 member states that have pulled out of the ECOWAS. Secondly, I mean, on the other one, I'm not sure that ECOWAS handled the matter very, very tactfully. And I think that has been made the position. Whereas ECOWAS had wanted to intervene militarily. President Tinubu, as the chair of ECOWAS at the material time, had threatened to invade Niger in particular, which is that, we have zero tolerance for any form of military dictatorship. That itself was a mobilization tool for the people in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. People now came out in their millions to say, you cannot remove the government in our country, you cannot invade our country. Just like would be our attitude to the US coming to invade our countries, So that was also the way these countries, until the military chiefs in each of our countries, until the military chiefs sat and they said, we cannot invade. It's going to be difficult to invade. It has serious implications. Our people are one. If you take Niger, for instance, between Nigeria and Niger, at the border, it's not different. So if you're going to declare war, we're going to have a problem. So that now led to a few of the plan to invade Niger. But after that, and having regard to the fight that we're fighting a common enemy in terrorism, I would rather suggest that the ECOWAS leadership will need to reach out to the Sahelian states and also let them know that if they go on the way they are going with Russia, some of them may even be overthrown by the terrorist gangs. So I think ECOWAS do not handle their exit or the fact that they led to their exit well. But now that they have gone, it shouldn't be, we're not going to work together. We need to work together. And we need to, particularly for the civil society organizations, we must also maintain contacts with civil society organizations in these countries. I didn't mention Guinea-Conakry that has just had an election whereby the president, as usual, and opposition candidates, and he has now won election and declared himself, or he's been declared the winner of election. Part of the problem of ECOWAS is this business of going to observe elections. ECOWAS does not discriminate. A man has manipulated the constitution of his country. He has banned his opponents from contesting. He has jailed some of them. Yet, ECOWAS will always set up a mission to go and observe this election. And it's a way of, endorsing the legality that takes place in this country. So, the people now ask, if you don't defend us when we are being suppressed, when civilian dictators are destroying our constitution and democracy, what is your moral right as ECOWAS in challenging military dictators when they remove unpopular government? So with the ECOWAS, we have to go back to its own protocol on democracy and good governance. And unless we are prepared to ensure that this protocol is actualized, not, we only talk of that protocol when a military dictator has sacked a civilian government. Oh, you are suspended, we are not going to sit down with you, but at the end of the day, it doesn't happen. So the ECOWAS must be up and doing. It was the case in the past, whereby a guy like Yahya Jammeh was isolated at his thing. He wanted to become chair of ECOWAS. They said, no, you cannot become chair of ECOWAS, having regard to you are suppressing the democratic forces in your country. So it must be the position of ECOWAS all the time.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, for answering that question very, very insightfully. The second question is from Emmanuel Chuku Eku, and he asks, what is the way forward to liberate African states from corruption and bad governance? Because I can trace reasons of coup to that. If solution is not preferred, then that will spur African states to try any idea or ways available to.
The only solution is to mobilize the people to defend their political and economic interests. And it's not a job for CSOs. It has to be a genuine political intervention. We must get credible politicians to challenge authoritarian rule in each of our countries. We have to pay a lot of price, but we must go back, genuine democratic forces must go back to the barricades, as we witnessed in the 80s and 90s. Right now, in each of our countries, authoritarian rule is the order of the day. And it has implications internationally. Whereas the United States before Trump could be counted upon in dealing with some of these authoritarian regimes. But today, Mr. Trump himself is planning a third term. He has a group working on how the American Constitution can be manipulated for him to have a third term. So, in the shortest period, the US cannot be counted upon. Whereas, just imagine the hypocrisy. A man was coming out to save Christians. Meanwhile, he has gone to Venezuela, which is 100% Christian country, So, but we have to understand and also educate our people who are currently embracing Mr. Trump, who are hailing him, please come and take over security in Nigeria, in West Africa. In the 60s, it was unthinkable to have a military base in Nigeria or Ghana. Ghana in particular, impossible. But today, you have the American military base. Yeah. While we are chasing away French, a military base, you have American military base. You also have French military base in Benin. Nigeria and the French military base coordinated the attack on the coup plotters in that country recently. Again, to the annoyance of the people of that country who are thought, we are going to be liberated from the misrule of Talon. So we have these contradictions. For me, the only way we can stop corruption, abuse of office, impunity is to get properly organized politically. Yes, we have NGOs in our country, we issue reports. It has no meaning. Those efforts have no meaning for dictators. And they believe, in the case of Nigeria, after 1 or 2 weeks, we move on. So we need to get people to be organized politically. These guys need to be challenged on the political terrain. Of course, we are going to have NGOs, we are going to have human rights bodies, but we must encourage credible politicians to mobilize our people to fight for their interests. In fact, it's so that we need to have victims of corruption. We have not educated our people to appreciate the danger of having a government that is corrupt. You will not distribute money during election and sentence our people to penury for the next 4 or 8 years. So this is why we need to go out, mobilize people, educate them, enlighten them. That collecting, in the case of Nigeria, 5,000 naira on the day of election will not address problems of unemployment of young people, illiteracy, drop, mismanagement of the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderfully answering that question. The second question is from Remy, and the question that he asks, what role can regional civil society and the Center for Community and Oceanic Law play in enhancing security cooperation and governance stability, sir?
Thank you very much. The center and similar institutions will have to work together. In the case of Nigeria, there are organizations that are interested in promoting good governance, in promoting democracy, and fighting corruption. Because these problems are interlinked. So we need to reach out to such organizations. Secondly, the center must, it's a policy, support democratic struggle. Take for instance, last Saturday, the people of Ekpoma came out in their thousands to protest peacefully against kidnapping and payment of ransom to rescue those who have been kidnapped. What was the reaction of the government? Instead of assuring them, we're going to secure you, the government decided to have them arrested, have them charged, and lock up in prison. And because of the backlash, the governor said, out of the 52, okay, 38 have been identified as students. Leave them alone. But the remaining 14 are likely to be charged with armed robbery, not for robbing anybody. Because the police refused to provide security during the protest, some angry youths took advantage and looted properties. But the government now wants to hold the protesters, unarmed protesters, peaceful protesters, vicariously liable for the criminality of the young people. Now, we must come out as a people, number one, to make the point that the right to protest is already recognized in Nigeria. Number two, the law says during protests, the police shall provide security. It is to prevent hoodlums and other dangerous elements from taking advantage of peaceful protest. So we need to defend the democratic rights of our people. Right now, many bloggers and journalists are wallowing in detention houses because they challenge misrule or corruption by governments. Now, to empower our people, we're currently waging a fight based on the judgment of the Supreme Court that money of local government, money belonging to local government, should be paid to them directly in Nigeria. What are we doing to ensure that at the local level, money, statutory allocation meant for local government go to the local government directly so that the question of development can be addressed? Right now, in the case of Nigeria, and in many of the other member states, the media only discuss the budget of the ruling, the federal government or the central government. Don't discuss the budget of states and local governments, where a lot of corruption equally takes place. So our job is cut out for us. We need to get organized. We need to work together. And we need to encourage people to go into politics and join issues with those who believe they have conquered our countries. And then for NGOs, we need to also work together and see how we can compare notes from time to time and also adopt a policy. An injury to one is an injury to all.
Thank you very much, sir. Indeed, an injury to one is an injury to all. So the third question from South Wales is, in your opinion, sir, what will it take to make the government of the day pay attention to the protection and promotion of fundamental human rights of its citizens within the ECOWAS community? That's question one from the same person. The second question is there any African or ECOWAS Nigerian can learn from in its drive towards protection of human rights? And lastly, from the same person, what is your assessment of the Nigerian court in handling fundamental human rights cases, sir?
One, for each of our countries, again, as I said, apart from Morocco, all the member states of the African Union have adopted the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Beyond our constitution, beyond the national constitution, the African Charter incorporates human rights and people's rights. Right to environment, right to development, right to control our resources, and right to participate in the government of our country are all entrenched in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So, I would rather suggest, instead of limiting ourselves to our national constitutions, we must break down the African Charter so that our people can know the extent of their rights under the Charter. Now, if we can compel our government to respect the rights of our people guaranteed by the Charter and our national constitutions, the question of human rights will really be settled. In the case of Nigeria, again, you cannot believe it. Apart from the constitution, a number of laws have been enacted to make it impossible, for instance, to have illegal arrest and detention. In the case of Nigeria, anybody arrested by the police, on getting to the police station, the police shall contact your next of kin that Mr. or Miss so person is in this station. If you have no lawyer, the police will contact the legal aid council to send a lawyer to the police station that somebody wants the services of a lawyer paid for by the government. Can go on and on and on. So we need to get hold of these laws that have recognized the rights of our people and go out there to mobilize our people to demand for their rights, to defend their rights. But right now, the government is exploiting the ignorance of our people to do a lot of the things that is going on the Nigerian courts. Again, when the program this afternoon, I was just telling you about the Ghanaian program. What I'm saying is that under the military, the courts were freer than now. When we're fighting the military in Nigeria, we're even charged with treasonable felony against by the Babangida regime. We were granted pay in a liberal time. We're never asked to deposit our passport, go and produce a level 15 officer, and so on and so forth. These conditions are meant to keep people in jail so that you don't harass the government. We must stop that. You had a protest in 2024. What did the government do? Is to arrest people, including children, and charge them with treason and terrorism. So these are the problems confronting our people. Again, if we are organized, we can always, today, if anybody is detained anywhere in Nigeria, and we get the information, I can take it up. If the police will not release the person, I will get lawyers to go there and have them freed. If you are defending your right or you are exercising your fundamental right. So, again, like I said, we need to get organized. We need to link up with organizations. We need to link up with individuals that can defend the rights of our people. The government will not do it for us. The government doesn't want people try to be respected. But we need to mobilize. And the courts, we're also trying to let the courts know we didn't go this low under the military. So why are you not respecting the rights of our people now? Again, if we're organized and we can expose judges that are giving bad judgment, or for sanction, of course, it will be a different country entirely.
Of course, sir. Of course, thank you very much, sir. And sorry, everyone, we have so many questions, so many comments in the chat box. But I think this should be, or this would be the last question, sir. So this question is from CY. He says, how do we juxtapose the principle of responsibility to protect with obvious incompetence of democratic government like Nigeria to deal with terrorists and other serious crimes? And secondly, what effective sanctions can ECOWAS employ to compel military juntas to return to democracy? At the most, can joint military action be taken? Thank you very much, sir.
Well, first one, on what can be done with respect to a competent government. Again, I've made the point. You cannot remain internet warriors, just abusing government in our WhatsApp groups. People must go out and take part in the governance of their country. Article 13 of the African Charter on Human People's Rights provides that it is the right of every African to be part of the government of their country. So we must encourage people. During election, the elite, we just sit down, we are watching CNN. Atrocities are being committed on the two where people are asked to vote. So we must get involved, not just by contesting elections alone, by monitoring the democratic process and encouraging people to participate, vote without collecting pride, and to tell them to appreciate that you need to demand for programs that can abolish poverty as opposed to alleviating poverty. On sanctions, the ECOWAS is very weak right now to impose sanctions. Many of the leaders, unfortunately, many of the elected leaders are not better than the military dictators. So they have a moral crisis. It's a different matter if you say, oh, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, you have democratic governments, properly run, government that respect the rights of the people. But if these countries, the governments are detaining people, the governments are arresting those who are exercising their freedom of expression, looting of the treasury is going on, it becomes difficult for us, even for us, to say military rule is an anathema. So for ECOWAS, it's difficult. ECOWAS lacks the moral and political will on sanctions on this corner. Apart from, okay, we're not going to sit down with you, we're seeing economic sanctions. They cannot impose economic sanctions because of the weakness of our economies. So we're not in charge of our affairs. So a venture like your own must appreciate, and then to draw up program, plans, to get people to go back to the barricade, as was the case in the past. And that was how we got this rickety democracy. It was a product of struggle. And we must go back now, not assume that we have political stability in many of our countries. Again, as I said, apart from Ghana, Cape and Senegal, all the other countries, any of the other countries can be overthrown by military dictators, military politicians. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I think we've lost him. So thank you very much, sir. It's been such a wonderful, wonderful and insightful webinar. I think we'll proceed to the last section of this webinar, which is the vote of thanks. Well, truly, I have really learned so much, and I've enjoyed myself during this time. Indeed, has been such a power-packed webinar. And I remain your humble moderator, Jennifer Ozoma, a recent law graduate from Abia State University, Faculty of Law, and a recent recently admitted into the Nigerian Law School. I am an intern with the Center for Community and Oceanic Law, currently being mentored, strictly being mentored, and I'm enjoying it. So it's been such a wonderful journey. Currently, the center has 21 members, 21 young, vibrant members, including young undergraduates, including graduates and young early career practitioners. So please engage with us in our social media platforms. Any question that wasn't given any answer today, please engage with our platforms, and I promise you would get a response to your question. On that note, I would delightfully hand over to Professor Amos of the Center of Community and Oceanic Law to give the vote of thanks. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been lovely having you here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for the wonderful work you've done. I want to personally add my appreciation to those of participants and yours for the guest speaker. He's done a wonderful work today. We're so grateful. Despite his very tight schedule, he was able to join us, and I'm so grateful to you, sir. Always, I thank you, sir, for your humility and your willingness always to share knowledge is very commendable. Thank you so very much. I am indeed very grateful. And as you have heard today, one word I would like to say is that there's a need for all of us to get involved in ECOWAS. ECOWAS isn't as it is at the moment, doesn't seem to be representing us properly. So there's a need for us to get involved, to see what they're doing, and to just make them know that we are there, we are observing. From the commission itself, the Authority of Affairs of State and Government, the Council of Ministers, is one misstep or another. You know, somebody once said that ECOWAS always speaks up when a coup happens, because it's a paddy club of leaders. So you protect me, I protect you. But when citizens should vote, like we saw in Cote d'Ivoire, Ouattara in 2020, 24, 25. We saw with Edema in Congo. We saw with Macky Sall in Senegal that the senior advocate spoke about just now. But for the consciousness, the political consciousness of the Senegalese, Faye would not have stepped into that office. And we are seeing with embryo what the Ernest senior advocate also described. We are seeing what has happened in Guinea-Bissau with embryo. Again, even in Guinea, the election of last month in Guinea was something that we expected, we knew was going to become the president. Somebody who overthrown the government, wore Agbada, and now is president. So what we see with ECOWAS doesn't seem to represent, some would say ECOWAS doesn't represent the citizens. Because when citizens should vote, when they rise up to say, look, we're not happy with our government, we're not happy with the way the political space is being strong and the way the leaders are behaving, and something happens to them, leaders go after them, maybe there's repression, ECOWAS hardly will come on the side of the people. But when something happens to one of their parties, as somebody said, oh, maybe there's a coup, or then ECOWAS will rise up and say, oh, yeah, this coup we are condemning is zero tolerance, but ECOWAS needs to begin to address citizens. ECOWAS needs to begin to show that it is interested in the welfare of citizens, so that everyone, all of us, can know that, yes, we can take ownership of the ECOWAS project. But nobody's going to give that to us. And that is why at the center we are doing what we're doing. I want to invite everyone to get interested, follow what is happening in ECOWAS, and let's begin to make them know that, yes, we are here. We want ECOWAS, we want a proper institution. Otherwise, ECOWAS is the most, when you talk about an institution that is very organized in structure, ECOWAS is the most organized in Africa, with the structures that it has, and ECOWAS Court of Human People's Rights, powerful court, but we see a lot of infractions. And again, as senior advocate also pointed out, judgments are not being obeyed, Nigeria being at the forefront of that. And so I want to thank you so very much. I hope this will just be the beginning of the conversation. And we'll call on you over and over again. Senior advocate, sir, Mr. Falana, I'm so grateful to you, sir. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm grateful, and I'm grateful to all the participants. Thank you. At this point, we'd like to call it a day. Thank you all. Bye-bye.